we're going to a depression, possibly a depression. And so when our buddy Joe Biden took off the Keystone XL pipeline, inflation went through the roof. That wipes out the poor because they can't afford to eat. The system is failing. So we're going to have more homelessness, more unemployment, and the government has to print more money. I think this is the biggest economic bubble in world history. Biden is going hat in hand to Venezuela and to Iran to try and get oil, but he cuts off U.S. oil.
Biden slaps Putin on the world stage. It's toxic masculinity. The world is in trouble. The national debt is going to go through the roof. Biden is causing inflation and blaming Putin.
So the other side of the coin is China. And then during the Beijing Winter Olympics, there was a picture of Putin and Premier Xi, very powerful men, standing together, while America has the biggest, weakest president, probably the most dangerous president we've ever had.
Don't listen to your stupid real estate agent who tells you that, the price of real estate always goes up, because it doesn't. When I hear people coming up to me, the price of real estate going up and they're jumping in to buy real estate right now, I don't say anything. And the reason is that people are just getting into the hype. All this credit, it's actually debt, credit and debt, pumping into this economy, trying to prevent this crash. We're on a turning point. But please understand, ladies and gentlemen, inflation makes the rich extremely rich. The middle class will pay higher taxes, and the poor will get poor because they're the ones who can't afford the $25 Wagyu steak that my friends are selling. So that's why we're in the biggest critical turning points, and that's why I don't know how many years ago when I walked past Richard's book and Borders, and it's the dollar crisis. If you understand what's going on, the problem is the U.S. dollar. Because in 1944, it stopped being money. It just became the reserve currency of the world. And in 71, Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard. We're being set up right now, one of the biggest changes in world history. And it's, I bought a property. What do you think? I can't even talk to him. And if inflation keeps going, I get richer. I am extremely happy. And I think Biden, I'm not Republican or Democrat, he intentionally wants inflation. That's why he shut down the XL pipeline. That's why he stopped drilling, to get oil prices up. When oil prices go up, you have all these truckers in Ottawa screaming they can't get food to the table and all this. Prices of food go up. Inflation keeps going up regardless of what's going on, just because the policies of the Biden administration shutting down the XL pipeline, stopping drilling of oil, so the price of oil goes up. I watch all this, and meanwhile, these people are jumping out and buying real estate like there's no tomorrow. This, to me, is 2007 all over again, and then the repo market collapsed. 2008, the market collapsed, and back in 2008, this guy named Bernanke, I believe it was, could print money. And this is where we are today. You've got to wake up, ladies and gentlemen, because otherwise you're just this stupid little hog just driving to slaughter. Not just America, we're one of the biggest turning points in world history. And like there was Rockefeller, one of those guys said is, when shoeshine boys are giving you stock tips, time to get out. And I was in Safeway the other night, and these people are coming up to me, I did what you said, I bought a rental property. And I came back home and I said to Kim, I have to sell. It is so dangerous, but you can't talk somebody out of it because they drank the Kool-Aid. So that's why I'm really honored to have a dear friend, Richard Duncan, been friends for years. He helped Kim and I time the last turn back in 2008. We made fortunes because while everybody was selling, we were buying. And that time has come again. And it's going to make it harder and harder for mom and pop to go buy that house they're going to flip. And so that's why please listen to what Richard Duncan has to say.
A few months ago, the Fed was still creating $120 billion every month. And then in November, they said they were going to start tapering that, reducing that by $15 billion a month. But the very next month in December, they said they're going to double that and reduce it by $30 billion a month. And that meant that it's going to come to a complete stop. The money printing is going to end totally early next month.
No more printing next month.
No more printing. And then the real blow came because in early January, they started letting it be known that they were planning to do the opposite. Instead of printing a lot of money through quantitative easing, they're going to start destroying a lot of money through quantitative tightening. Now, when they print money, that pushes asset prices up. When they destroy money, that tends to make asset prices fall. Well, they destroy money because when they print money, they buy bonds with that money. And normally, when the bonds mature, they just roll them over and buy a similar kind of bond. But they destroy money by essentially selling those bonds. And when the Fed, what happens is the bonds mature and the Fed doesn't roll them over. Someone else has to buy the bond. So the Fed gets its money back. And when the Fed gets money back, that money just evaporates. The Fed doesn't need to keep any money because it can make all the money it wants anytime it wants to. So it's a bit complicated to explain in just a few sentences, but the bottom line is it's the opposite of quantitative easing. Quantitative tightening destroys money, and that tends to make stock prices fall. And we're about to get a heavy dose of quantitative tightening coming into effect within the next couple of months. Well, they think the opposite. When they, instead of printing money, that's the thing that normally causes inflation. It stimulates the economy, it creates growth. But when they destroy the money, that tends to make asset prices fall, like stocks and property. So people are less rich, so they spend less money. And if they spend less money, then prices tend to fall.
The first 10 years of this century, we have had 3 major crashes. In 2000 was the dot-com crash, followed by the 2006 real estate subprime crash, and then 2008, the banking crash. The question is this next? This is the giant crash of 1929. And every time I listen to those guys on CNBC, I call it bubble vision, they keep talking about the giant crash of 1929. I tell you what, it doesn't even compare to this one coming. So that's why I write and I speak, and I'm very concerned about our futures, our well-being, and the state of the economy.
But not long ago, I wrote that the best time to prepare for a crash is before a crash.
We're going into one of the roughest periods of humanity right now. And the problem is, from my perspective, is the dollar. And so if you understand the dollar, US dollar versus the loonie, it was created in 1913, but so was a tax department created in 1913. So what they're going to do, we have so much debt today, they're going to have to keep printing. But every time they do that, it creates more poverty.
My game financially is business, number one. Second is real estate. And that's why I pay no taxes. That's why Trump pays no taxes legally. It is a combination of business and real estate that gives us an unfair advantage over employees because they don't know what to do. Depreciation is what the government wants us to do. So in other words, there's 3 things. There's appreciation, amortization, and depreciation. So the way guys like Trump and Kushner and the rich guys do it is called the McDonald's formula of business. So let's say I make $1 million. I don't want to pay tax on that. So I take that $1 million, instead of spending it on something stupid, I buy a piece of real estate. So let's say for $5 million. So I go from $1 million to $5 million. Then I appreciate, depreciate, and amortize that $5 million, and it offsets my $1 million in tax.
Now that's good news for me because I sell oil. I mean, oil went from $30 a barrel to $130 a barrel. I make more money, but America is going to go broke.
But Biden is doing more damage because he's a wimp. And, he opens the whole southern border, lets people through. He evacuates out of Afghanistan. He cuts off oil production in America to keep the greenies happy. So Biden is a very weak man, and you have 2 very strong men, Putin and Premier Xi.
This guy Biden is the worst I have ever seen. Man is senile. And today what's happening is Russia and China are now ganging up on the U.S. It's really a dangerous world right now. It's getting worse. When Trump was in power, I was a bit optimistic. But now we have the weakest, most corrupt government
everybody was wondering if Putin was going to whack the Ukraine. And everybody said, no, 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 no. So he whacked him. And now, as we're talking, his efforts are slowing down because unlike Biden, that coward, the Ukrainians are fighting back. It's interesting, too, that Biden took a lot of money out of the Ukrainians. I thought that was interesting, too. And it was Trump who armed the Ukrainians. So both countries are fairly corrupt, but I think it's interesting that they're fighting back. The only way money comes into existence is via debt. So the Fed writes this check, the next level bank gets the check, and they lend it out, they lend it out, lend it out, lend it out, lend it out. So guys like myself get money for free. But mom and pop on the street who, they can't make the payment, so they go to a payday loan store, and the minimum they're going to, on a credit card is about 31% interest, which is really horrible, to 1,000% interest. So this whole thing, the thing about the pyramid, that seeing eye on the dollar bill, it is screwing our own people. So that's why I'm becoming more and more around to, I don't want to be part of the communist system called a central bank. And central bank is a communist system.
And when the crash comes, it comes so fast on you, you don't know what's going to hit. I look at the emptying office spaces because people are not going back to work. I mean, this is not an ordinary recession. The Apple says they're not going to go back to work. All the office buildings empty. And, residential real estate depends upon jobs. You know what I mean? If you're saying recession means a loss of jobs, which Amazon's laying off, what happens to real estate wherever they have an Amazon office? That was one of the biggest announcements I ever heard, that the IMF is saying the world faces one of the biggest economic challenges since World War II.